Yo, dudes, the Empire's pretty chill. Maybe you could, join it or something.
Hey everyone, Lucimus Prime here. So, it's time for the next episode of my series of Old is Better Than New. And today's video is going to be covering, this time, more of a hobby sort of thing than, of course, like a film or video game franchise or TV show franchise or whatever. But this time, of course, a hobby. And this, of course, relates to video games, of course, because this is a hobby that I've been doing pretty much all my entire life, really, when it comes to, what I've been doing as a hobby. And this hobby, of course, for me, where I would personally say the old part of it is better than the new parts of it, for me, of course, is none other than gaming. So, when it comes, of course, to my life then, so I've been a gamer pretty much my entire life, and I started off as a PC gamer when I was a little kid. I played things like LEGO Star Wars on it and stuff like that. Then, I got my first ever console, which was Xbox 360. I played on that in my childhood years, my last years, my childhood, and then in my early teenage years. Then when I turned 15, I got an Xbox One. I was playing that, of course. And then in 2022, I then became a PlayStation gamer. And since 2022, I've been playing on PlayStation consoles. I've had others, because in that year, I of course got PS4. Then the following year, I got the PS3. Then the Christmas in 2023, I of course got the PS5. Then in the next year, I of course got a PS2. And portable console-wise, I of course play on PS Vita as well, and I also play Nintendo Switch as well. So, I've been a gamer pretty much my entire life, really, and it's definitely, for me, been a really amazing hobby, because gaming, for me, has been a source of comfort, because it's been allowing me to take time out of any issues I had in life, and I can take my mind off things that have happened, by having fun, by getting lost in all these gaming world, really, And yes, I'm also one of those people who also prefers gaming at weekends instead of going out to places, just like, of course, the absolute legend that's Henry Cavill. And when it comes, of course, to history of gaming, I personally think that in recent times, gaming really has hit hard times, unfortunately, for various reasons. So, one is, unfortunately, that I feel like gaming as a whole is sort of taking an approach where games nowadays feel like films for some reason. Now, this idea can work in some scenarios when it comes to games I have played, and this accounts for games which, of course, are quite recent as well. But the issue, of course, with that is, because they're taking a cinematic approach, it can unfortunately result in issues you can get in films, which also can now, unfortunately, be found in games, sadly. Because at first, when gaming first started, the issues you can't have with films might not have been present in the games, that is, because games were different form of media, of course, but because they're so similar now, those issues are now going on to the games, and one particular issue which really angers me a lot in films, which I feel games these days unfortunately do have, is unfortunately wokeness. For those of you who don't know, I absolutely despise wokeness. In my opinion, it ruins everything it touches so much. It's done it to lots of film franchises I love, lots of TV shows I watch, and unfortunately that also includes games, sadly. In this series of videos, I've covered several franchises where I'd say, it's better new for them. For example, Call of Duty and also Naughty Dog's games as well, in my opinion, especially because of The Last of Us, this horrendous sequel, which I've heard nothing but bad news about, and I flat out refuse to play because there's only one The Last of Us game, only one. And even as also saying as well about Star Wars games too as well. I'd say even their old games are better than new in this series too as well. And that definitely applies to this. So, I feel by taking a thematic approach, games these days can unfortunately fall into a trap of wokeness. Now, there have been some I play which don't have wokeness in, thankfully. And there's some, at least recently, which don't have it in, which is a big relief, I must say. Because sadly, I feel like these days, games can fall into a trap of being woke, which absolutely sucks. And another thing as well that also irritates me a lot about this approach is also the insane focus on having the most realistic graphics possible compared to the gameplay itself. Because I personally think the line between games and films is really blurring a lot because of this. So, when it comes, of course, to games and films, of course, I feel that games these days are trying way too hard to have the most realistic graphics possible ever. To pretty much be like a live-action film, basically. Now, sometimes it can work in some scenarios because in my opinion, the best game of all time I've played in terms of graphics and detail for me is Red Dead Redemption 2. And that, in my opinion, worked really well. In my opinion, it's one of the greatest games of all time. My second favorite game of all time behind Grand Theft Auto 4, which is also an old game, so what does that tell you? So I'd say Red Dead Redemption 2 is an exception when it comes to this, but because the games these days are focusing on the graphics being too real, it means that unfortunately the gameplay has sadly downgraded because of the not so much focus on the gameplay itself. And that really irritates me because when I'm playing a game, I'm here for the gameplay, not to see the best graphics possible. No, I want to play a good game. Because I'll be real, you guys, I do not care how real games look when it comes to their graphics. I really don't care about that. All I want is to play a good game. That's all I want. And these days, when I look at gameplay for games, I'll only play the games if the gameplay actually looks good. These days, in my opinion, examples of games that for me can age really well is probably cartoon games, because they thankfully don't care about this intense realistic detail in things, really. They, of course, go for a cartoon approach because, well, they're based on cartoons, of course. Some of them that I've played, for example, the Simpsons game, which in my opinion is a game that's aged really well. And when games, of course, go for this cartoonic approach, they can age really well because of the less details to worry about, of course, compared to other games. And if the gameplay itself is also good, I'll definitely be in for that, absolutely. So yeah, that's what I'll say when it comes to games. I feel that these days, because they're trying to make them as realistic as possible when it comes to graphics, it's taken away the great gameplay we once had before. And I know this because I've played a variety of old games, old ones, right? And I'm not going to deny the graphics are not as realistic as ones we get today. But does that mean that I don't like the games? No, absolutely not. I love the old games because the gameplay is awesome. It's what I'm here for as a gamer. So, and that's what I love about games in the old, because they focused on giving us great gameplay. They didn't care about having the best graphics ever. All I want when playing a game is just to have fun and play a good game when it comes to gameplay. Because that's what it's supposed to be. Games are not films. I'll say it simply as that. Games shouldn't be focusing on having the best graphics of all time, because they're not films, they're games. I'll make it as briefly and blunt as possible by saying that for you. And when it comes, of course, to today's games then, and there are many of them which I've avoided because I feel that they've really taken a massive downgrade compared to old games I've played. And it really sucks because when, of course, technology is improving and advancing, you'd expect them to improve. But unfortunately, I've not seen that because they only care about making the best graphics possible and not about great gameplay, as I've noticed in recent stuff, sadly. One example for me, when it comes to recent stuff, is Mortal Kombat games. I can confirm this when I played MK11. I replayed it recently, and I can definitely confirm that. Even MK1, for what I've seen clips of, doesn't look like it's improved out, which really sucks. And there's also, as well, the issue when it comes, as well, to graphics, because even sometimes games these days have terrible graphics compared to old games, which in my opinion is very appalling. You'd think they'd improve, but sadly not. I think because they all rely on realistic graphics, it can go horribly wrong at times. I've seen this in games released last year. And there's even been games with terrible graphics too. For example, Lord of the Rings Gollum, which in my opinion has absolutely abominable graphics, which would not look out of place on like a Sega Mega Drive game. Although I've seen better Sega Mega Drive games than that game, definitely. And so it's just really appalling what direction games have gone in. There's also Skull Island game, which is a King Kong game. I've seen clips of that, and that looks absolutely abominable. I still can't believe the game based on Peter Jackson's film in 2005 looks much better compared to that. And that's like a 2005 game, guys. Nearly 20 years old, and looks better than a recent King Kong game. That's just so appalling, isn't it? Yeah, there's lots of franchises for gaming where it's all together new. I, of course, cover them in this series of videos, and I'll definitely, of course, happily bring up here that a lot of old games are better than their newest ones. Absolutely. So, I feel that gaming has taken a really bad turn because they're trying to make them be like films, and that means the same issue with films. For example, of course, wokeness, which absolutely sucks. And because of the intense focus on having the best graphics of all time, it's no longer a priority for them to focus on the gameplay for some reason, which I think is just so dumb. Like, I don't get it, because when making a game, it's the gameplay you should be focusing on making the best, not the graphics. When it comes to today's games, there is some exceptions of games I'm still going to play for, that is, of course. While I personally don't really care much about games because I have these issues I've talked about, I still, however, have full trust in games made in Japan. Because these days, I think Japan has gaming at its peak, in my opinion. There's a reason why many people say that Japan has the best game designers of all time, and I couldn't agree more with that statement. Because I think the games they make today stand out compared to other games because, for example, they're not woke, which I definitely really appreciate, and the gameplay is tons and tons of fun. And I can confirm this because I play Super Mario Odyssey on Nintendo Switch, absolute masterpiece, best Mario game I've ever played. That game wasn't woke, and it was tons and tons of fun. And because it's a cartoon style game, in my opinion, it aged phenomenally compared to other games which have released graphics, which in my opinion have aged horrendously. And I'll happily play them on Nintendo exclusive games on the Switch, absolutely. That's definitely something I'm still going to keep going with, of course. And I still, of course, have tons and tons of old PlayStation games I've yet to play on PS3 and on PS2, which I really can't wait to play one day. I'm very excited for that. And hopefully I can get more PS1 games, because so far I've got some Tekken and Mortal Kombat games on PS1, which I can of course play on my PS3 backwards compatible, so I'm in luck with that, thankfully. Hopefully I can get more of them, of course, absolutely. And nowadays, guys, when it comes to games, I'll only look at clips of the gameplay, and if the gameplay is good, I will probably play it, but if it's part of a franchise I don't care about, or of course, they don't care about the gameplay at all when making the game, then I'm out. No chance of playing it, absolutely not. When it comes to my future as a gamer, guys, of course, as you guys may know from my community posts, my most anticipated game this year is Sonic X Shadow Generations. I'm very excited for that game. Hope it's going to be great. And next year, I'm also very excited as well for Doom the Dark Ages as well, because I love the Doom games. I'm hoping this one's going to be good. I really hope so. But when it comes to gaming, guys, I think it's taken a bad turn recently, and now I definitely would say that gaming as a whole was better in old than new. So, in future, I'm going to keep playing on older games, absolutely, because in my opinion, they're so much fun to play through, and I really enjoy myself. I don't get bored playing old games at all, definitely not. Nowadays, when it comes to newer games, I just want to do one playthrough, and that's it, done. I don't want to revisit them ever again, no chance. But old games, though, I'll happily give lots of my time to when replaying and revisiting, absolutely. Because in my opinion, they're much better in old than the new, that's for sure. So, long story short, guys, I personally think gaming is much better in the old than the new. So, you know the drill, guys. Be sure to give this video a like. Also, be sure to let in the comments what you guys think of gaming. Do you think old gaming is better than new gaming? Let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to join Team Prime by pressing subscribe and news coming in the future. And I'll see you all later.